Nice to see you too, Risa. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm very good. You're out on the West Coast. I'm on the East Coast. And here we are
Mm-hmm.
together today to talk all things therapy and different kinds of therapy. I think that this is, I like to focus a lot on mindset and what's happening in our brains because I feel like this is the first decision maker, right? For any kind
Mm-hmm.
of change or acknowledgement of what's happening, as we grow older and we're so set in our ways in a lot of, in a lot of respects that sometimes it's harder to change these habits. But I wanted to talk to you because there's just so many ways in which we can kind of really look inwards, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's so important at any stage in life, but especially in midlife, because there's some major transitions that are happening. So before we get to it, and I really want people to like listen carefully to this interview because Grace is going to just drop so much knowledge, and I'm so excited to talk to you about all the things. But before we get there, if you can share a little bit with the audience, kind of like where you're from, what's your story, how did you get to be a therapist, why therapy, and all the things.
Hi, everyone. I'm Grace. I'm originally from Malaysia, but I've also lived in Beijing, New York, Hong Kong, and now I'm based in Pasadena in California. And I'm currently a marriage and family therapist. Before that, I've also been through the entertainment industry, corporate, a little bit of fashion agency work, a little bit of here and there, odd jobs. So, and this is all before I turned 30. So
Wow. What?
I know. Yeah, I'm turning 30 this year. And I've lived
Congratulations.
thank you, I made it. I like to tell clients, friends that I've just like lived a lot of life before 30. So of course that's a high chance for burnout for those of you with wisdom. I had to learn the hard way and burned out twice before I turned 25. And that was when I had to really sit down and think like, okay, what am I good at? What do I love doing? And what's not going to burn me out in the future? And that's when I think back all the way to when I was in NYU. I had a drama therapist as one of my professors, and Maria Hodomarska, amazing woman, shout out to her. She was the one who saw me and was like, I think you'd be a good therapist. And I remember being 20 and I was like, haha, that's funny. I'll live life first. And that I did. And so
And
that's
then
how I
some.
and and
And
and
then
then some, yeah. And that's how I ended up coming to California and pursuing a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. And now I am an associate level therapist, so I still have to gain my hours to get full licensure. Um, but I'm gladly on this process. It's been so fulfilling. I love meeting people and I love connecting with people and love hearing their story, and I get to do that every day. So that's
that's really, really
that.
amazing. I think that, I feel like your approach to therapy is also quite unique, right? Therapy, everybody talks about going to see their therapists these days and such, and you know, it's more than just talking, right?
Yeah.
And how to meet your clients where they're at. And I feel like people in midlife, we come with a lot more baggage just because we're older and we have a lot more life experience.
Hmm.
So, what was it about therapy that was like, my professor's right. Like this, I think this is something that I could be really good at as well as enjoy.
Firstly, I think I had to go through my own therapy. Um, I went through my own round of grief and depression, and when I finally took the chance on therapy, because I grew up from a generation where mental health wasn't that big growing up, but in my 20s, suddenly, especially in the last 10 years, the talk around therapy became so normalized. So I felt like, okay, this is the time to actually try it out. And in the first session, I looked at my therapist and I was like, I want to do what you do. You mean I just get to sit there, listen, talk to people, meet them in their like deepest, darkest moment. And usually, for some people, that's going to be turning them away from the world of therapy. But for me, I've always believed that there is more to life than just work. There's more to life than just play. I like to find meaning in things and making life meaningful. And so when I was going through my own therapy, I realized like this is the kind of work that is both enriching, fulfilling, sustainable in terms of finances and also in terms of lifestyle, flexibility. As a woman, I'm always thinking about like what if I do have kids and I want to have a life and a work that like can mold around that. So that's the practical aspect that's being fulfilled by being a therapist. But the other side of it is that I get to do this really meaningful work of seeing people grow, seeing people change, have more fulfillment in their lives, have relationships be repaired, or sometimes needing space from that relationship and being able to have that bravery to make that decision. Just being able to see each person become who they're meant to be. That's what really keeps me going in this job.
Well, let me ask you. So, like, because you do marriage therapy, right? And
Mm-hmm.
in midlife, there's many times where people have been married for a very long time, and I'm sure that you probably see clients. Oftentimes, I'm assuming, and maybe I'm wrong, but people will come to see a therapist because there's some sort of crisis happening,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not necessarily like I'm feeling okay. Let me go see my therapist. Like usually,
I
it's
wish,
yeah, right.
but rarely, rarely.
I mean, it's true on every level, right? It's not even mental health, it's all physical health
Mm-hmm.
too, right? We tend to not go to see the doctor or whatever. Preventative medicine is just not in our human DNA for some reason. I don't know why, but and part of modern aging is to really help people shift, right? Make those shifts so that they can
Mm-hmm.
prevent the crises that are about to happen or whatever. Um, but kind of bringing it back to marriage and those people who have been married for a long time or whatnot, do you see some sort of common threads or common, I don't know, I guess challenges? And then how do you address something that's, a problem for 20 years? Do you know what I mean? Or 10 years?
That's such a good question. And I think it's so applicable to your listeners as well. And I think I want to normalize this as well. Like you mentioned, like people only come to therapy when it's a full crisis. That is extra the case with couples. It's like you're on the brink of separation, brink of divorce, brink of death, even
Right.
just brink on something that feels irreparable or unfixable, or like there's no reverse, like rewind button. And so I just want to normalize that. And as a therapist, I think one thing I want to highlight is that my job in the room is to hold hope for both of you. And hope doesn't look like, oh, you are going to end up in a perfect marriage again, or, oh, you're definitely going to break up. It's holding hope that whatever therapy looks like for both of you as you go through therapy together, the ending would be something that both of you have peace over, and that you've learned at the end of therapy how to understand each other better, communicate your needs and wants better to the other person, and have a little less regret in your heart that at least like we tried this or we did this, or because we did this our lives are better. So that's my job in the room. And then when it comes to common topics around that age range, I'm thinking about empty nest. When
Mm-hmm.
your kids leave, suddenly you're forced to face each other again and build up a relationship again after many years of focusing on these wonderful beings that you're trying to grow together. I'm also thinking about infidelity. And you've known someone for 20 plus years or 30 plus years, or maybe even, 5 to 10 years, and it just gets really like stale because
Mm-hmm.
routine's set, the spark is no longer there, and bodies change. And also one thing I love about your podcast, Risa, is that it normalizes like your bodies do change, hormones change, different phases of life biologically have different needs, and that actually does feed into infidelity. And not to normalize like infidelity in that sense, but just to say that it does happen, and working through that together and what that looks like in go overcoming this event in your life. What does that look like? So different for each couple. And also just the fact that divorce rates are on the rise too. divorce is becoming more normalized, and also couples who are considering separation. The good news is that a lot of couples are considering it in a healthy way. Like, how do I go through divorce in a way that doesn't harm my child, how it doesn't harm my extended family, it doesn't harm myself. It's mutually beneficial and it's as harmonious as it can be. And on top of that, another thing that just popped into my mind, aging parents. In
Mm-hmm.
an aging society, if both your parents are like, so you have four sets of grandparents that you have to think about when I think about being a child. There's four different adults that you're caring for, and you're caring for kids, so you're the full on sandwich generation. That's a lot of stress and pressure, and even if your marriage is good, it still can cause a lot of strain and communication about very deep rooted topics and topics that are close to your heart, like what does death mean to you? What do funerals look like? What does dying in peace, do not resuscitate options? And these are really topics we don't think about in day to day life, but it's actually something that we need to think about and talk about. And if there's cultural differences, belief differences, even though you've known someone for 30 years, if you've never talked about it, it's going to be a huge blow up, on top of the fact that there is impending crises of like that person's falling even more sick, or Alzheimer's. Like, okay, like, do I move them in a care home before it's too late, or wait till it gets worse? All these kind of really big life questions. Yeah, there's a lot in the midlife
Oh,
and
yes.
beyond. Yeah.
Indeed, indeed. And I feel like people who are like Gen Xers, for example, like myself, right? We we're kind of like used to kind of being on our own in a lot of ways, the way we were raised. A lot of us are latchkey kids, and um kind of that self-determination, and I can fix myself and I can just do it. And I
Mm-hmm.
know that a lot of people, of course, are also in therapy, and I truly believe like everybody should be in therapy. I don't think this is like just for people with problems, because if you don't have any
Yes.
problems, that's a problem too, right?
Yes.
I mean, like, you're in denial about something. So, and there's just so much value in terms of also finding the right therapist, because I don't think you can just go to anybody, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
just like not everybody's going to be your friend or your mentor or your partner or whatever it may be. And so that has to be carefully considered as well, and not just thinking, oh, I can just, this person is just going to solve my problems. But I know that you have different modalities in the way you approach therapy, and that's what I find really fascinating as well, because it's not only the therapist, but like the way they also treat you, um, in a way that's productive. And because all of our brains work differently, it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
different for each person, right?
Yep.
So maybe you can talk a little bit about creative art therapy in terms of how you use it, why do you use it, and how effective it is, and how do you see it? You know, I I feel like most people know what art therapy is, but they don't really know what art therapy is. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Hmm. It's definitely something that once you experience it, then you understand it. Something I want to touch on is that it's really important that you like your therapist. Just like you said, Risa, like, if not everyone's meant to be for you, just like your therapist. So if there's, especially in the initial consultation, getting to know each other process, if you just feel like, I don't like this person, I don't want to spend an hour with them, go find someone else. There are plenty of therapists around the world, and I think it's important to advocate for yourself in that way as a client. So that's the little nugget of wisdom I'll leave there. And as for creative arts therapy, I love it. I think it's such a great way to connect with your like creative self, inner child, the part of you that's so free and wants to just have fun. And as we get older, as an adult, we have so much responsibility. So I creative art therapies is a way for you to just like forget how to talk and just do and just draw, play, mold, create something that you never thought you could. And And like you said, Risa, like there is that part of our brain that feels so hardened and wired that it can't be unwired. Creative arts is such a great way to just like see if new brain connections can happen. Um, and I think the best way to illustrate how powerful creative arts therapy is for me is so when I work with couples, sometimes I use this intervention, which is I fold a piece of paper into three, and then we open it back up, and then on the top we write before, during, and after, and then we'll have each person in the couple draw what life was like before therapy, during therapy, so what's going on right now, and what would you look like? What would your couplehood look like after therapy? So what are you hoping for? And when you draw it out and then you bring it back to me or bring it back to each other, you kind of talk through like what you drew, what's going on in your head. And it's not about drawing perfectly. It's about drawing like how you want to represent how you feel, what you're hoping for, what you're dreaming for. And I think of this couple who at the end of that activity they drew at the after bit, one of them drew a family table full of like, it was a family dinner, there's a ton of food, it was a beautiful round table with so many family members. And the other partner drew him and the partner in the sun on the beach by the pool, just two people. And you can already feel the difference of their two dreams of what they want family, being a couple, being together, what that looks like. And as I pointed it out, they were able to talk through like, okay, why I drew this. Am I able to be curious about why just two of us in a pool? Am I curious? So like, okay, who else is going to be at the family table, and communicate over this? And is it compatible as well? Like, do these two hopes and dreams mold, and would they actually work? That's not up to me to decide, because you could have a beautiful family dinner and then go out to the beach right after, just the two of you to decompress. But can they come to that conclusion? Do they want to come to that conclusion, or is this not reconcilable? And that's kind of just showing how like how I use creative arts therapy. It kind of taps into that part of you that you don't know how to express, you don't know how to talk about. It kind of expands the possibilities of therapy beyond just talking, because for some of us, and I'm speaking as someone who's Asian, we don't know how to express ourselves, we weren't taught to express ourselves, and language, you add on cultural barriers, ESL as a barrier, language becomes a barrier in therapy and an obstacle to really getting yourself understood by someone else. So being able to draw it out, being able to put pen to paper, that's something that I feel like is really useful in the therapy space.
Wow. Yeah, I can imagine it being really powerful either way. It could kind of, I'm sure people do it, and even though people may have hesitations on drawing something, it must be very revelatory for some couples or even individuals if you're using it as an individual, right? And in terms of where they want their life to go, or and kind of confronting maybe things that they didn't even realize they needed to confront, right? I think that's the, I guess, the jewel or the gem of therapy sometimes, is just you don't realize that the root of your problem is, or issues or whatever it may be, the troubles, is actually probably not what you immediately thought it was. Like you think it's A, but it's actually C, and you're like, what? And it kind of like throws you for a loop. But I can see how drawing something and illustrating can bring you there in a softer way than maybe words.
Yes. I like that softer way. It feels a little, it's a lot gentler. And like I said, you're holding pen and paper, crayons, Play-Doh, whatever it is that medium is, because it's so tactile and so like fun. There's this layer of like, okay, I can have fun. I can find some humor in it, instead of it being like, oh, we're going to dig into your trauma of your trauma of your trauma, and using the exact words that I'm using, and finding the right way to express myself so that Grace fully understands me. Whereas like art there's space, there's room to make mistakes and ask questions and be like, oh, I didn't see it that way, but I like that, seeing new perspectives and being able to be curious.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm assuming like music therapy is very similar, right?
Yeah.
Um, in terms
Mm-hmm.
of using different parts of the brain to be able to address whatever it is that you're trying to address. And it's amazingly powerful, right? Sometimes the direct route is not so direct, you know?
Yep. Yeah.
The circuitous route may be faster, right? In terms of trying to address what it is, whatever is going on and whatever's bothering you. And I do love this philosophy of how you try to get people to arrive to who their true self is, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think we spend a long time, many of us spend a long time avoiding who that person is.
Mm-hmm.
And then something happens in their life where they're really confronted with it, and then they have to really face it. And uh, it can be really hard sometimes to look in the mirror for many people, and I totally get that. And um, but how do we get over that hump, right? How do we move past that? How do we heal ourselves and address whatever may be happening inside that inner work? Because the inner work is really hard. It's really hard,
Yeah.
Grace.
Yeah. No, it is. It is. And anyone who tells you otherwise, they're selling you a scam. There's a saying in therapy, it's like the slower you go, the faster you'll get to where you need to be.
Mm,
So the more we slow down, the more we like kind of like almost like take life to a pausing moment. That's when you're really able to, like you said, like look in the mirror and look and reflect and think and not freak out essentially about what's been happening for the past 40 to 50 years. And I also just want to just normalize the fact that like a lot of us didn't have those resources in 20 to 30 years ago. So um, a lot of people who come into therapy later in life, they feel that sense of regret, that helplessness of like, oh, there was no one to help me, no one told me about this, I wish I've known earlier. And all of the different parts of you that have been there to help you are still helping you. And it's about not necessarily saying like, oh, there's a part of you that is super critical, we don't need her anymore, let's get rid of her. It's more of like, hey, why have you been so critical? Well, how are you trying to help me by being so critical? How has this helped you as being a mother or being a daughter or being a friend, being a partner? And can we, instead of being critical, maybe can we be sharp? Can we be witty? Can we also like maybe turn on the critical side of us only at work because we need it for work, but maybe at home we need another part of us to come in and say and be more gentle, be more curious, be more on the listening side instead of critical. So it's about understanding, like, especially when you're older in life, you have so much wisdom, so much experience, and so many different parts of you that have all been incredibly useful to get you to where you are. And so instead of like letting them just be rigid, it's like, can we use different parts of you in different moments and understand that there are different parts of you that can be useful in other situations, like what you've learned at home, maybe like being a caretaker to a baby for so long can be actually really useful to looking after your new Gen Z coworker who is like frustrating you endlessly. But you can
right.
still use, yeah, and you can still use that like gentleness, that care, that patience, the way that you've been creative in caring for a child to then care for a coworker. So it's about being versatile and encouraging that flexibility in each person.
Yeah, no, I totally, totally agree. And I think, as I grow older and with my relationships and everything, you just also come to realize that you really can't, at the end of the day, fix anyone, right? We can only fix
Mm-mm.
ourselves, and we can only
Mm-hmm.
help guide, or we can create awareness, but ultimately, like, I have to do the work on myself, right? Nobody can do that work for me. And, vice versa, like anyone. And that's a really hard realization. That was really hard for me to kind of come to terms with, because in my personality, I'm a producer, I'm a fixer, I'm a like in my career, that's what I do. So
Mm-hmm.
in my personal life, right, you tend to want to do that sort of thing. And also being a woman, it's like, it's all those inherent maternal instincts. And then you're like, you realize, oh no, you can't fix any of it. I'm like, what? You know? It's, but by essence, by working on myself, right, it helps other people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, but like, so which one? I want to segue into also this whole thing around brain spotting and
Mm-hmm.
EMDR and the difference and the similarities. Some folks may have heard of EMDR. Maybe you can define both, and then
Mm-hmm.
also just tell us a little bit about the similarities and the differences between these two modalities, which have been very powerful, proven to be very powerful for those who are suffering from trauma or other sorts of challenges in life.
Yeah, of course. So, I like to preface by saying I'm not trained. I'm not trained in EMDR. I am trained in brain spotting level 1. And there's level 2 up to 10, and there's a whole certification process. But they say that once you do level 1 training, you can brain spot others in your life. So EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So EMDR relies on bilateral eye movements, so moving your eyes from left to right, or just having any kind of bilateral movement. So it could be like like music in your ears going from left to right, or tapping your palms together, or palms on your thighs, or moving your legs left to right, which is also why walking is very therapeutic. So the idea is that
Mm.
as you're moving from something left to right in your body, your brain moves information from left to right brain. Left brain is where trauma is stored, and also the left brain is more logical, more rational. And when you you're able to move information over to the right side of the brain, the part that's more creative, more able to like come up with something new. Then you're moving information left to right. Then you're able to come to new realizations about what you've experienced before, or you're able to better regulate your body so that now something that was so activating and triggering can become a little less activating and triggering, or even to the point where it just becomes a fact of life or something that you've been through, so it doesn't get in the way of living and being in relationship with others. So that's the idea of EMDR. It is incredible, it is powerful, and you need a lot of training to become certified in EMDR. And safety is the key thing in EMDR. So if any one of you has not yet been through EMDR and your therapist is trained in EMDR, make sure that you feel safe and that your therapist is someone you feel completely yourself around. If not, I don't think it will work. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
I hear, and that's what I believe in. And so moving on to brain spotting. Brain spotting was birthed out of EMDR. So the founder of brain spotting was trying to do EMDR, and he was actually one of the top trainers. So he was really already well versed in the world of EMDR. But he realized that as he was doing bilateral eye movement, suddenly one of his clients like stopped and was like, I don't need to move my eyes left and right. I just need to focus on this one brain spot. And so she locked her eyes in, and he kept his pointer at that point, and she was just able to process like whatever she needed to process. And she was able to do the thing that she never could do for the past like 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and for context, she was an athlete, so she couldn't do the triple axel as an ice skater. And after that brain spotting session, she was able to do that triple axel move that she has never been able to do. So the idea of brain spotting is that where you look is where your brain is activated. And this is going to sound even more mumbo jumbo than EMDR. It's again one of those things you need to experience it to really understand it and be able to articulate. And even then, it may not be as clear as you'd like it to be. But that idea of where you look is where your brain's activated. So I'll find a brain spot for you, and you focus in on that point. And then the idea is that your brain naturally wants to rewire itself. Neuroplasticity, we're really leaning heavily on this idea that your brain is always changing, always rewiring itself. Sorry, always always rewiring itself. I get so passionate about this part. So um, the idea is that when you look, you're focusing your brain on this one spot, but the rest of your brain is being activated as well to kind of to just support that part of you, that part of your brain that needs to be, healed, rewired, reimagined, and the coolest part for me is that brain spotting completely trusts the client to have the wisdom in themselves to be able to rewire their own brain. Like, I can't rewire your own brain. I don't even know what your brain looks like. But my hope is that your brain is capable and functional enough. And it is. This even works with neurodivergent brains. So if brains with ADHD, brains with autism, this all relies on how your brain is going to rewire itself.
Wow, that
Yeah.
is crazy.
It's that's
Amazing.
why I say it's like it's kind of weird. But it's really amazing to see how brain spotting has really helped a lot of my clients with trauma. And when we focus in on that part of them that is traumatized, and they found a brain spot, and they start to process and go through all kinds of thoughts and emotions and body sensations and memories, by the end of the session, they're able to be like, okay, I've went down from 9 to a 6. And even though 6 is still pretty high up there in the scale of 1 to 10 or 0 to 10, the next week they can come back and be like, oh, wow, I had this new realization. I had this new thought. Oh, I encountered this really triggering thing that should have triggered me way more, but I'm less triggered. And I'm like, it's brain spotting. I did nothing. I just held a pointer for you.
Wow. So physically, what are you doing? You're holding a pointer?
I'm just holding a pointer, and I'm just holding a spot for you. And
Are
yeah,
you
that's
asking
it.
questions, or you're like having them relive this traumatic moment? Is it just like what is actually happening?
um, so I don't force you to relive your traumatic memory. EMDR does do that. They try to find your worst possible memory or experience and try to target that deep part. Brain spotting can start anywhere. Like, you could start with just like, I'm getting really activated by my boss today, and I don't understand why, but I feel like I'm at like an 8, and I really don't understand why. And then we start there, and then your brain kind of makes those connections for itself, like, oh, maybe it's connected to this part of your childhood, maybe it's connected to this memory, maybe it's connected to like what you ate for dinner, and you realize like, oh wow, I didn't have a good night's sleep, maybe that's why I need to get a good night's sleep. So your brain does this thing of like making connections naturally, so we're just relying on that strength already. And what happens in a brain spotting session is up to you. So I usually don't talk during brain spotting because I want you to have like almost like hear your own thoughts and see if you have the chance to regulate yourself. And sometimes clients speak throughout, sometimes clients are silent for the 45 minutes. I personally, when I brain spot, I actually end up falling asleep, because my
Wow.
brain goes into such like hyperdrive that it gets tired, and then I fall asleep, which is not a bad thing because your brain still is working even when you're sleeping. And so and that's why sleep is so important. It's where you solidify a lot of memories and core connections that you had throughout the day. Um, so anything can happen in brain spotting. And then usually by the last like 5 to 10 minutes, if I feel like there's a question to be asked, I'll ask it. But usually throughout the session, I'm like, just notice that this is coming up. Just notice that this emotion's coming up, or just affirming that this is happening and kind of following you through it. There's a saying in brain spotting, it's called following the tail of the comet. You're the comet and you're taking the lead. Your brain's taking you to places that it needs to go. And I'm just following you and witnessing and holding you through this process.
Wow. And that can create real neuroplasticity changes
Yes. Yeah.
in your brain.
Yeah.
That's ins-
I,
that that's like magic to me. Like that's amazing. Like, really, it feels so simple. Um,
yeah.
Like almost so simple, like how do you, so even people with severe trauma, so is it the sort of thing where, okay, you go into a brain spotting session and so you're already prepared that you're going to do a brain spotting session, or is it more like you're talking and then they say something that you feel like, oh, maybe brain spotting would work for
You
something
can do
like
both. Yeah, so you can do both. Some people go in intentionally for a brain spotter or brain spotting trained therapists, so they want to do just brain spotting. And sometimes I do plan with clients, like say it's a very, very traumatic incident that came up in session, and then I'm like, okay, next week let's prepare to do it. Um, but that's a huge difference between brain spotting and EMDR. EMDR requires you to be resourced, so there's sessions planned ahead to make sure you have self-care, you have routines in place, you have safe people. And then when you actually do EMDR, then you have all those resources for post EMDR session. Brain spotting can happen at any moment. I and it doesn't have to just be trauma. So that's what I also love about it. I've used it with decision making. So it just think about how in your own life when you're looking left to right, you're thinking about, oh, should I do this? Should I do that? But if you can find a spot where you feel the most uncertain and the most activated, you focus in on that. 5 minutes later, I've had clients be like, oh, okay, I know what to do. Here's what I'm going to do. And they feel so much peace and so much groundedness about it. And that's because we're really, when you focus, it's a wonderful thing that your brain just does. The rest of your brain comes in to just help that focused, activated point. So it doesn't just have to be about trauma. It can be decision making. I think I've used it with like uncertainty about the future. Used it with like, even like I said, like a tiff with your boss. It doesn't have to be the biggest thing, but there's a reason why it keeps coming back in sessions 3 weeks in a row. So maybe I need this like extra modality to tap into why language is failing you right now.
Mm, right. Can you do it on yourself?
I can. So that's, I mean,
Whoa. Yeah.
ideally you should have someone else doing for you. It's more powerful in that way. It's just the same way as like why self-help journals are beautiful, but having talking about your self-help journal with your therapist is even more powerful. Same concept, but I do use brain spotting on myself. So, um, for example, when I'm in therapy or I'm in supervision, I'm talking about stuff that's been triggering me or stuff that I'm working through on myself, but I notice that my eyes just lock in on one point. And since I have the knowledge of brain spotting, I can follow that train of thought. I can keep my eyes on that spot. And it's something I also give clients as a tool that they can use. Like it's called gaze spotting. So you kind of like notice when you're talking about something that's really activating your eyes start to hone in on that one point. Just keep your eyes on that point and just let your brain do its thing of wandering, um, working through it. So I do use that in my own life too.
That is so, so cool. My God. Wow. And so for people who are, kind of on the fence, do I need a therapist? I don't know if I need a therapist. It's like my problems aren't that bad, right? Or I think that area, that gray area can, I guess if you're thinking about it, you should just go. Is my theory. Um, but really, but like, do you recommend, at what point do you recommend, maybe you should go talk to a therapist, or maybe you should, maybe brain spotting would be a good thing for you, or, are there points where you do recommend it for folks, or, I think art therapy might be really effective for you.
Mm-hmm.
Are
Yeah.
you constantly psychoanalyzing your friends and family? In other words,
I try not to, but
I know.
sometimes that part of my brain just comes up. We naturally make connections. um, I think for me personally, when I notice that there is a problem that just keeps coming up over and over with a friend or family, mostly friends, I would say, in my current stage of life, I am gentle in saying that you need therapy because there. So, what I love about therapy is that this is the only time, an hour in your life, that you get to focus on just you. How
Mm,
awesome and rare is that, especially as you get older, you have kids, you have responsibilities, you have parents to take care of. This is the 1 hour in your life you get to focus on you. That in itself is an incredible form of self-care. So when you think of it like that, then it becomes something that everyone needs. Everyone needs some me time, some me space. And even though, yes, your therapist is there, but your therapist is there to fully focus on you. And that is invaluable, especially when you have like 20 different things in a day or in a week, and you have no time to think about yourself, your own needs, your wants, your dreams, your hopes, your regrets. Being able to have that 1 hour aside just for yourself is life changing for so many, just even in that inherent structure of therapy. I also don't believe that therapy can solve everything, but coming to therapy will help you have better relationships, having better habits, better thoughts, better ways of thinking, and being creative, and being I don't know, all around flexible, so that life doesn't become the force that drags you along, that you have a little bit more agency and autonomy to stand in the face of a wave and be like, hold on a second, let me decide what to do. Or if the wave comes, you're like, I'm learning how to flow with it, I'm learning how to swim. So there is no really good time or really bad time to come to therapy. There are better times to come to therapy. I usually recommend doing it before a crisis happens, so that you already have this pre-existing relationship with someone you trust, so that when the crisis does come, and you have to see this person weekly, there's this like, okay, I trust this person, I look forward to my sessions, I know that this will be my time. And it becomes like a form of joy in when it's a season of sadness or a season of anxiety. So that's my recommendation. But also, if you do end up seeking therapy in the middle of the storm, I'm so glad you're seeking therapy in the middle of the storm. Better late than never. And also with that, I think it depends on the competence and the level of the competence and confidence of the therapist to determine whether they're a good fit for you as well. So some therapists are trauma somatic trained, like brain spotting, some somatic experiencing, EMDR. Some clients need that. Most clients do not. And I know this is controversial to say, but as long as your therapist is trauma informed, they will still do good work with you. But whether you need something that's somatic, usually it means that you have some really deep rooted trauma. Probably like really extreme examples include like substance abuse, sexual abuse, growing up in highly dysfunctional families, moving around multiple environments, a lot of traumatic backgrounds like war. And it doesn't just have to be in your immediate family, it can be generational as well. So if you're a child of immigrants or you're an immigrant yourself, there is a lot of deep-rooted trauma in your family system, which is in your genetics, which is in you. So I would recommend something that's more somatic based. And if you're feeling like I just need something to process through life, a regular therapist should be a good enough fit, like someone who just does talk therapy. But it's also then up to the therapist to be like, I've hit my limit. I think you need something deeper, or I feel like you need someone different. And I've definitely done that myself as a therapist, especially in my earlier years where I wasn't as trained. I was still learning. I'm still learning, but back then even more so, figuring out like where my competence is at that time. And referring clients out was the best decision for them and me, because then I wasn't worried about, can I take care of this person fully? Can I be the best possible therapist for them? And for them, then they are like, oh, I can actually get to where I need to go, and also learn how to have a new relationship with someone else. I think that in itself is a healing thing, where you learn how to trust another therapist, and maybe that's why they need it. So I hate that there's no right and wrong with a question of like, when should I seek therapy? But a good sign is if someone has mentioned you should seek therapy, you should probably seek therapy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And also the fact that everybody needs a tune-up no matter
Oh,
what, right?
yes.
And no one really gives us a manual on how to navigate life, right? We kind of just have to go through it and roll with the punches, so to speak. And if you have a guide there who can kind of really help you through that, there's a lot of benefit from that. And whether you're starting when you're 50 years old, or or you're 20 years old, I think that you're right. I mean, it's just, there's no perfect time, but there's always the right time. Any time can be the right time.
Yeah.
Gosh, Grace, thank you so, so much. This has been so great. So if people want to follow you, I mean, you have a podcast and all the things. Can you share with the audience where they can reach you and where they
Of
can hear more
course.
about you?
Yeah. So I'm currently on a podcast called TCM Talk Therapy, and it's me and a traditional Chinese medicine doctor. Her name is Jen. She's amazing, and we basically just talk about the commonalities and similarities between a traditional Chinese medicine and mental health, or traditional talk therapy. And we cover a range of topics. Right now, we have a few episodes out on summer and anxiety, seasonal living, and also interviewing different people on their own takes in the intersection of mental health and Chinese medicine. And also, as someone from an Asian background, this has been incredibly amazing to be able to fuse Western and Eastern ideas. So, growing up in the East and then learning most of my education in the West, it's been able to being able to find common ground between the two and how they inform each other so well has been incredibly fulfilling. And I hope you enjoy it as well. And the best way to reach out to me is through my Instagram. It's at The Grace Cares. And that's my therapist profile. I also have a public profile that's more personal. It's called The Grace Chan. I keep both because I think that it's important to show both sides of me. And yeah, those are the best ways to reach out.
Awesome. Grace, thank you so, so much. It's been so great.
Thank you so much, Risa. I love your podcast. I love what you're doing, and I am so honored to be a part of it.